All right, welcome to Live from My Drum Room and a special episode of Track Talk. My guest is legendary drummer, returning champion, and three-time Hall of Fame inductee, Steve Smith. Steve was voted into Modern Drummers Hall of Fame in 2002, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of Journey in 2017, and inducted into Zildjian's Hall of Fame in 2023 during their 400th anniversary celebration. Steve was also an early guest on Live from My Drum Room way back on August 30th, 2020, episode number 13. So be sure to check out that episode in the archives if you haven't seen it. And I'm so honored to have Steve back here today for a Track Talk episode. This was really, really fun. We did a deep dive into several Journey songs, as well as Bryan Adams' big hit song, Heaven, that Steve played on. And it turns out the only number one song that Steve's ever played on was Heaven. I didn't know that until today. So come along for the ride. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you on the other side. Please welcome the legendary Steve Smith. Thank you for being here. I'm so happy to have you here today. Thank you.
From my drum room to your drum room.
Yeah. My drum room's just it pales in comparison to your drum room.
What? This thing's small. Look at, I have one. Well, I got a big kit here and my little jazz kit here.
Yeah.
No platinum records out here.
No, not there. Do you have those in New York? Are those in the?
I have one in New York. No, I have one. I have the Journey Diamond Award for Escape.
Man,
that's it.
10 million.
And then
yeah.
And then what I did is I just have one for each album. Otherwise, it starts to look like what's behind you. And that's just too much for the house.
Well, I will say, I remember visiting your old house in Novato,
right,
in the late 80s, early 90s. I came up there one time, and I remember going into your studio. I feel like there was a hallway.
There was a hallway lined up on both sides.
It was, folks, I got to tell you, it was I think at the time I might have had 4 or 5 of these in my office, and I thought that was cool. And I'm walking down Steve's hallway, and it's just a wall to wall of gold and platinum records.
It got out of control, so I ended up giving most of them away.
Yeah,
I'm happy to be on them, but it's after a while, it just took up too much space. So, and then when we moved there, I just didn't put them back up.
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, Steve, it's great to have you here today. And I know before we kind of get started, I want to explain to everybody what we're going to do today. And, Steve has done so many interviews over the years, did a recent one with Elmo, Go with Elmo, I think it's called, right? The show or something like that.
Yes.
And it was really, really good. And if you haven't checked it out, be sure to check it out, because it's a great, I think, and I know you've done many of these, Steve, where it really kind of encompasses your entire career, kind of from even before Berkeley to, right now. And it's great. And so today we're going to really sort of focus on Journey records, some other things, Track Talk, really kind of digging into these tunes. And I pointed out to Steve, off the air, that it's kind of a, I don't know if you'd call this an anniversary, but it's been 40 years since you haven't been in Journey. Well, I should change that, because actually you were back in Journey for a while. But
I wasn't. I was just touring with Journey.
Okay. Touring with Journey. Okay. So that's correct. You had left in 85, and
that's right.
Hard to believe. And I just remember I was working in the music industry. I'd moved out to LA, and when word got out that you'd left the band and they were auditioning drummers, every drummer that I knew, pro drummer, auditioned for the band. It was the biggest cattle call in the history of bands. And
I know, and that alone would make an interesting mini documentary at some point.
It absolutely would. Yeah. And I'll just, and we're going to move on to something else in 1 second here. But my point to all that is that they were trying to find someone just like you. That's the funny thing, is that I remember talking to Mike Baird about it, who ended up getting the gig to tour with him.
Right.
And Mike Mike had come to DW and we were talking about it. And I didn't know him well, but we were chatting, and he said, "Yeah, I said to them, why don't you just get Steve back in the band? That's what you're describing him with what you're looking for." Anyway,
I know it was very interesting, and I was in touch with a lot of the drummers that came to the audition. In fact, Danny Gottlieb auditioned, and he stayed at my house.
I remember that. Yeah.
And Rod Morgenstein was there. And I mean, it was a who's who, and it was an interesting show. And another interesting part of that is even Larry London auditioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had played on the album Raised on Radio, but still they had him audition for the live tour. Anyway, and he didn't get it.
And he didn't get it. Okay. See, I thought he did get it, but in the end he didn't want to go on the road or something. But no.
Maybe that's true. I don't know. I wasn't really involved. See, by that time I was quite happily playing with Steps Ahead.
Yeah.
I was touring it with Michael Brecker and Daryl Jones, who ended up in the Rolling Stones, and Mike Stern and Mike Maneri. So I was in this pretty fantastic group. So, and observing it from a distance. So it was an interesting endeavor.
Yeah. Well, let's move on here. Let's talk about some Journey songs.
Okay.
And a little historic perspective here. You joined the band in 1978.
Yes.
And hard to believe, I mean, when I think about that, I was thinking about that this morning, like we're closing in on 50 years, which is just pretty amazing. And I thought maybe we'd play sort of a couple of early songs, kind of how the band evolved.
So which album are you referring
to? So I'm referring to Departure, I'm Crying.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just talk about it sequentially. To start with. So there is the first thing that I did when I started playing with Journey was play a few gigs locally in around California. And it was in September of 1978 that I moved to Mill Valley to start playing with the band. And the first big assignment, let's say, was we played on a King Biscuit Flower Hour, with a radio program. And that happened in a studio in San Francisco. And that was a pretty cool thing that not many people know about, but there's a music writer named Joel Selvin in San Francisco. And if you go to Joel Selvin's website, you can find a link to the Journey Super Jam. And it was Journey at which with that lineup with Greg Raleigh on keyboards. And I had only been in the band like less than a month, really. And we played in the studio with Tommy Johnston sitting in, who's the lead singer from the Doobie Brothers and guitarist from the Doobie Brothers, and Tower Power horns and a few other guests. And we played some Journey tunes, but we also just jammed on some classic R&B tunes. And Steve Perry picked a Sam Cooke tune to do a tribute to one of his biggest influences. So that's a pretty cool show that you can hear on the Joel Selvin site. And then the first album that we worked on was Evolution, that has Love and Touch and has, like you mentioned,
City of Angels.
City of the Angels.
City of Angels.
And Loving You Is Easy. And I was really making a transition from being a jazz fusion based drummer to really learning how to lay down a solid, wide foundation for a rock group and to support a singer. Like before that time, I really hadn't worked with pro singers, a pro singer ever. Really, like I was mainly playing with instrumentalists. And then to get in a situation with Steve Perry, it was really kind of an incredible situation where he sings great, but he also was a drummer. He was a singing drummer before he stopped, playing drums and just became a front man. So he would give me a lot of input into what he needed for a comfortable drum track. So you can really hear on that Evolution album like a very conscious effort to play, give in a wide open way, like give every note its full beat, full sustain, and not have any, like not be pushing forward, not like any kind of rushing at all. It was like, yes, very open and relaxed. I think you can really hear it on that record because I was so conscious of just playing with the widest beat that I could possibly play with.
Yeah, that's a great description of it. Well, should we play? I had from that record, I had a couple in mind, and
okay, sure.
Yeah, and I also do have some of that stuff that the Joel Selvin, those King Biscuit songs that we could listen. If you want to, I have those kind of queued up in here. You were kind enough to send me that information, send me those files. So it's pretty great. And I had Joel on my show a couple of years ago, or about a year and a half ago.
Oh, right.
For the Jim Gordon book.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's a cool guy, very interesting guy.
He is. Yeah. He was always like, he wrote liner notes for some of the Journey albums and was just like he was a very close friend of Herbie Herbert's, the band's manager. Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, you play like a little bit of Hold On, I'm Coming. Do you have that? Could you play there?
Yeah, I sure do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. You can hear what I mean about it's just like us getting together and jamming, and me, starting to get a feel with the group.
Yeah, this is great. Here it comes. Hold On, I'm Coming. And this was 1978, Steve?
October 1978.
October 1978. All right.
Before Evolution.
Before Evolution. All right.
Hold On, I'm Coming was another song that Annie and Joe and myself sang. It was an original Sam and Dave tune, I think it was, many years ago. And it was a fun tune to play because everybody got a good feel happening. And the tower horn section played on this also, as did everybody in the group Journey.
Yeah, that's cool. It gives you the vibe.
Absolutely. And had you guys, were you guys literally jamming in the sense that like no rehearsal, you just like Steve just kind of called it? Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
We just call into tunes. Yeah. Roadrunner is another one that's really cool, is Roadrunner. But it's a good show.
Yeah, it really is. And you were familiar enough with, that's a standard, a classic, obviously. So you probably played that like in top 40 bands or something when you were younger.
Probably. But even if some of the songs I didn't know, but just, you could figure them out easy enough.
Yeah. Because you play that. I listened to this when you sent me this it's really authentic what you're playing. You know what I mean? It's definitely got the feel of, of that R&B groove,
I was doing like a fair amount of gigs like that in Boston especially with Neil Stubenhouse, who went on to become like a, first call LA bass player. But he and I had a group that called ecstasy, and we used to play pop gigs around Boston. And Neil was he was very much like a mentor. Even then, he'd give me albums and say, take this James Brown album and give me albums by the meters, and we would kind of dissect them and play the music, and then play that music on gigs along with whatever top 40 hits were happening at that time. So and I'm talking about like 73, 74, 75, that time period.
Yeah, man, great time. I mean, what a great period for music. Not just here in Boston, but everywhere. But I mean, you and Neil at school together, and Vinny and JR and your other classmates, Casey. I mean, it was a good time and a lot of mutual inspiration and great hangs. And we practiced, we studied with Gary Chafee. Most of us, I think we all studied with Alan Dawson. So it was a very, very good time to be at Berklee and to be in Boston. Yeah. Well, do you want to play a little bit of Roadrunner too? Do you want to hear some of that?
Sure, let's check that out. Yeah.
Let's play that. Okay, here we go.
Roadrunner is an old song by Junior Walker and the All-Stars, and I've always liked the song. I always wanted to have a chance to sing it, and I finally got that chance here on the Super Jam, which is really a great feeling for me because I love the tune. The horn section for Tower of Power is on this song. Annie and Joe are singing with me. The whole group Journey is in on this tune. It's a real scorcher.
Yeah, it's a good tempo. That's a good tempo right there. One, got some tape going?
Rolling.
One, two, 1, 2.
Toothbrush in my hand. Lord knows I'm a traveling man. Oh, I'm a roadrunner, baby. Can't stay one place too long.
Man,
that's killing, right?
It's so tight. The band is so tight. Like, really.
It's super groovy. I know. Everyone sounds great playing. Like Perry sounds amazing singing.
He does, man.
In that style. And that's Lenny Pickett on saxophone. He was still in Tower Power at that point before he moved to New York, and now we hear him on Saturday Night Live.
Right on. Yeah. I mean, it's Steve Perry and you, of course, but Steve Perry, he sounds so like in his zone. He always sounds in his zone
Yeah.
on all the Journey
But
stuff.
that's where he comes from, really, from Sam Cooke and Jackie Wilson. You know,
Yeah.
those were his heroes, and you can really hear that those influences in his voice. And in a way, what makes it even more unique is then when he's in the setting of a big rock band, you know, with the music of Journey. It sounds very unique to have a singer like that in that kind of environment.
Yeah, and again, I'll come back to just how tight you guys all sound. Like, it sounds like a song that's not a song that a lot of bands could just sort of wing it. You know what I mean? It's got a lot of arrangement to it, and it was really effortless. It's great. Well, I thought maybe we'd move on to so let me ask you this then, Steve. So was this session leading up to Evolution?
Not necessarily. No, it was just something that was on the books, I think. You know, something that Herbie Herbert had arranged.
I see. Okay.
And the King Biscuit Flower Hour was a popular series at that time. We weren't the only band to do it. Lots of bands did it. And just historically, it used to literally, it goes all the way back to like the early days of radio, when there was a flour, Flour, a kind of flour, baking flour called King Biscuit. And so it used to be called the King Biscuit Flour Hour, as in flour to make bread with. But then in the 60s and 70s, it got changed to flour, like Flower Power. And so this version is the King Biscuit Flour Hour, as in peace and love.
Yeah. That's I remember it from the early 70s, and that's what I remember. Sunday nights
but it got its start with King Biscuit Flour.
Wow.
Way back in the day. Funny, but true.
That's some good trivia there.
Yep.
Coming from the man who grew up in the town where the Toll House cookie was invented. Whitman, Massachusetts. Yeah.
All right. So Evolution.
Yeah.
So that's where, you know, and I want to point out, I know you have your show as Track Talk, but in some ways I like to think of these as albums, you know, because that's what we were doing. We were writing albums.
Yes.
And we were thinking of like, how do we write 10 or 11 songs and make 40 minutes of music that you could put on side A and side B, and then hopefully have some hits, you know, hopefully have the hits that would put us on the radio and really sell the albums. But we were thinking of, you know, making albums, and so we'd write in a rehearsal room, come up with, you know, the songs we felt like we're going to make a great record, and then go in the studio with a producer, and that producer for that album was Roy Thomas Baker, who had produced Infinity, the first album that Steve Perry's on, with Ainsley Dunbar on drums. And he was known for Queen, like he produced Queen and their
The Cars really, too, yeah.
Yeah, and their biggest hits. So he had this 40-track, we recorded on like 2-inch tape, but he had some kind of like device that would turn that 2-inch tape into 40 tracks, not 24 tracks.
Wow. Yeah.
So when we went to the studio in LA called Cherokee, you know, we had 40 tracks to work with. And so he would do like lots of overdubs, like lots of guitar overdubs and vocal overdubs. But when we tracked, you know, we always tracked as a group. So everyone would play. We weren't just trying to get a bass and drum track and then overdub on that. It was just, we'd get a complete take. And another thing to point out that's in some ways not known so much these days is you would play, the band would play, and you'd settle on a take that felt the best, and it would be a band take. But inevitably, a lot of takes would have like little inconsistencies, or they'd have, you know, mistakes or something. but in a way you had to live with them because you couldn't punch in and just like fix a drum fill or, fix something. So one of the things in some ways that's kind of magical about takes in those days is they just had to be a good band take, the best band take you could get without going crazy. And we rehearsed a lot, so we wouldn't play more than 2-3 takes of each song. And then you could do like maybe fix the vocal, or you could fix some guitar solo that, try a different approach or something. But the bass and the drum tracks and usually keyboard tracks, that was pretty much, even a lot of the lead vocal that was it. It was done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
different process than today. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And a beautiful process.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I absolutely agree, Steve. And I think that is such a big part of why these songs sound the way they do and why they still sound great 45 years later, almost 50 years later, like sonically. Also, having a guy like Roy Thomas Baker, and who did you have different engineers on these different records, or did you have the same
the
engineer?
engineer was named Jeff Workman. And he was Roy Thomas Baker's engineer. But as it turned out, we thought, okay, well, Jeff Workman was so involved. Let's have him produce Departure.
Okay.
So he produced, and along with our live engineer, Kevin Elson. But in retrospect, I have to say, I don't love the sound of the drums on Departure. I do like the sound of the drums on Evolution a lot. And on Departure, we came and we did that at the Automat in San Francisco. And I don't think it sounds as big. And I don't, especially, I'm talking about the drums. They made the decision to keep me on, keep me on a riser, like my live riser. So we just put the whole riser and the drum set in the studio. Wow. Seemed like a good idea.
Yeah.
But, I think it sounds okay. But I do think the drum sound on Evolution is bigger and a little richer.
Absolutely. And full disclosure, Steve, I thought up until I looked recently, I thought that Departure, Departure was before Evolution. Like I thought that the drum sound improved by Evolution, and I'm looking at my little list here, and
it went the other way around.
yeah, and I had it backwards because I absolutely hear a difference in the drum sound between those.
And
two.
It was a different kit. It was like I had this big orange kit that I bought, I've talked about in other interviews. In '77, when I was with Ponte, he wanted me to get a big double bass kit. So that's when I bought my first Sonar kit, and it was a big orange Sonarphonic kit. Then I used that on Evolution. And then it just changed to another kit. It was still a Sonarphonic kit, and it was white. It looked just like this one here, basically. Yeah. And I don't think it was the fault of the drums. I'm not sure what it was. The fact that I was on the riser, it could have been the studio, it could have been the engineering, but whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Still, but I have to say, I like that album a lot. I like the album Departure a lot as a body of work.
As a body of work, yeah.
Yeah, because it's again, like we were pushing ourselves to go beyond what the band had done with Infinity and Evolution. So in some ways, Infinity and Evolution, they kind of work together as a body of work. And then we have to do something really different. And that was hence the title and a lot of kind of adventurous playing. Walks Like a Lady I'm playing brushes. It's kind of this bluesy, slow groove that was modeled after Up From the Sky, Jimi Hendrix and Mitch Mitchell from Axis Bold as Love. Like we were jamming on that when that tune came about. Like you brought up I'm Crying, which kind of is an indescribable just performance piece. It's not like a pop tune whatsoever. So, and it was a lot of, different things happened on that record. So I enjoy the album as a piece of work. Yeah.
I almost think of I'm Crying as like a, very prog sort of feeling in terms of, like certainly compared to other Journey songs that you guys evolved to. with a more commercial.
Yeah.
And I know you don't take that to mean anything. I think when people hear commercial, they take it almost like, well, we're not commercial, but you guys had a great blend of musicianship and like going for all kinds of shit, but also these really great commercial songs that people really loved,
Yeah. I mean, that album, it started with Any Way You Want It. So that was pretty commercial, pretty pop.
That's pretty commercial. Yeah.
Yeah. But then it goes like I'm Crying. And it, I recommend people listen to the whole album.
Yeah.
I'm really, again, they were designed to be listened to as a complete statement. And I still love listening to albums like that, like beginning to end, to get a feel of what the presentation was all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you want to, I was thinking maybe we'd listen to Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin' from Evolution.
Sure. Yeah. And that's where you're going to hear like very deliberate, open, relaxed, given every note its full value, hopefully no rushing whatsoever, just big open sound.
Big open sound, beautiful groove. And this, and I think I know the answer to this. When you guys went into the studio, all the songs were worked out ahead of time. You didn't like write in the studio per se. I remember you telling me years ago. Yeah.
No.
Was because
worked out.
Yeah. I mean, there's that. You spend a lot of money doing that. Obviously, it just doesn't make financial sense to do that. But
right.
And so was this a song? Did Neil kind of come up with like a blues progression? And you guys, I always wondered how this, what the sort of germ of the idea
I think
was.
it could have started with Steve Perry, because if you look at the writing credit, it is Steve Perry 100%.
It is. Okay.
Yeah. Which, I mean, again, what that means is like, you can't copyright a drum part, you can't copyright a bass part, and you can't copyright a chord progression. So you can copyright melody and lyrics.
Yeah.
So it was jammed up in the studio, but when it gets down to the nitty gritty of like, how to split up the songwriting, it's 100% Steve Perry. But it's like a group creation that, and it's also, it sounds very similar to a Sam Cooke tune, where in fact Sam Cooke uses the same "You Make Me Weep," the same melody and lyrics that Steve Perry nicely lifted and put it into this journey.
There are moments in the song, and maybe that's why I love it so much, where you could just imagine that it's Sam Cooke singing it. It's just exactly. where Steve does that sort of thing with his voice.
They call
where he goes
it
up.
the Sam Cooke yodel.
Yodel, yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Well, let's dig it for a second. This is "Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin' from Evolution, and here it comes.
Said we try loving, touching, squeezing each other. When I'm alone, all by myself, your eyes with someone else. Loving, touching, squeezing each other. You're tearing me apart every day. You're tearing me apart. Oh, what can I say? You're tearing me apart.
Had to play the whole song, Steve.
That's cool.
Those little bass drum triplets that you're playing at the end there.
Yeah,
That is
not triplets, but
Not
like
triplet-
little like 16th notes or something.
yeah. They're so hip.
And that's
so
like in a way I as that ending went on, I slowly added a little bit more. That was intentional, to introduce it a little at a time, and not play a busy bass drum part right away.
So
it was also like the beginnings of my developing like a more compositional drum approach versus improvisation, like thinking out more deliberately the parts that I wanted to play.
That's great. Yeah, that's exactly. You explained it perfectly, because the whole song builds at that point at the same time, and your drum part builds with it, and which makes perfect sense. Like, you didn't get ahead of it by playing all the cool shit right away. It's like, as the song's building, you're building, and it all happens at the same time in those last like 30 seconds. It makes
and in a way, I was inspired by Jeff Porcaro on Hold the Line. Because he did something like that on Hold the Line. Played some really hip bass drum rhythms and introduced them earlier in the tune, and then really got into them towards the end of the tune. So and again, another kind of an interesting journey trademark is that there's the song, and then there's the big hook at the end of the song that doesn't come in until the end, and then goes out on that big hook. It's a great tune. I won't say it's an underrated tune. I know everybody knows that song, but I think there's so many other big songs that one maybe sort of might get a little lost in the shuffle sometimes, I think. But there's a Sam Cooke song that's modeled after, but I don't know that it's like This Heart of Mine or something. I'm trying to look up what it is. Do you know that song?
I think, did Rod Stewart cover it years later? This Old Heart of Mine.
I don't know if that's it. I don't know. No, I just know it as a Sam Cooke tune. Anyway, it'd be interesting research for somebody.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it.
Nothing can change this love. Look that. You got that? Nothing can.
I'm going to find it. Okay, nothing can change this love. Okay, hang on a second.
Let's see if that's it.
Yeah, hang on a sec.
Yeah, that's it. Nothing can change this love. Put that on for a second, just like the first 30 seconds.
All right, hang on. Nothing
can change
this love.
By
Sam Cooke. Here it comes. Oh, yeah.
If I go a million miles away, I'd write a letter each and every day. 'Cause honey, nothing can ever change this love I have for you.
When I'm alone
And you can
all by myself, you're out with someone else. I hope Steve Perry's not watching. But man, he owes Sam Cooke some money. Wow.
Yeah, that's a good song.
That's a beautiful song. I'm gonna put that in my playlist for another time. But thank you for pointing that to me. Yeah, that's you could see where he got his inspiration for that. That's great.
Oh yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, I was gonna play I'm Crying anyway, and that's kind of
from Departure. Yeah.
From Departure, and chronologically that's the next record, and and it's not to say, because as you pointed out, Any Way You Want It was a big hit from that record. So, but this particular song, it has more of a prog feel to it than a lot of other stuff that I think of with you guys, but I could be way off bass in saying that.
I think of it, it's like, from my perspective, I call it a performance piece that shows the virtuosity of everyone in the group. And it's a live performance, meaning it's not something you can manufacture. You can hear, we are in the studio and we have a form that we're working with, but it's largely improvised. And you hear Greg Raleigh on the Hammond B3, Neil playing some great guitar, Ross, and then my drumming is very free. And so by that time I'd more settled into the role and was a lot looser and freer. And as you can hear on this tune, like really taking some chances. And it has when I think of prog, I'm thinking of like highly arranged, but this is maybe progressive, but it's loose. It's not. Yes. It's not really tightly arranged. It's very much just like, let's see what happens.
Yeah, and I think you and I think when you said you guys stretch, that's probably where I was trying to go with it. I think that's a better description of that. Yeah, and this was Greg's last record, right, with the band. This was
actually no.
No.
Well, the last studio record.
Last studio record.
I mean, it depends on it. Like, okay. the last full album that he played on really was Captured.
Okay.
So Captured is the live album, and in a way, it's like it's the summation of his contribution to Journey, because it's the music of infinity, evolution, and departure. It was the Departure tour, and we were playing all of that music. Plus, we actually played some music from before, from like the first 3 albums before Steve Perry was in the band, when it was like they called it a progressive rock, band. Yeah. And so actually, then there was one more studio album that we did with Greg that was called Dream After Dream. That was this. A soundtrack album to a Japanese movie.
Oh wow! Okay,
yeah, and it's not on. I don't think it's on iTunes or Spotify, but it's an album that we recorded while we were in Tokyo, and watched videos of this movie, and it's a really interesting album, and it's very unjourney like, because we're just in the studio improvising, watching a screen. So I think it's available as a CD and LP. It's called Dream After Dream.
Okay, like an import or something. Yeah, I'll have to look for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, yeah, let's play this. Let's play I'm Crying from Departure. Okay. Man, it's such a heavy tune.
It is. It's very emotionally intense.
It really, and a bunch of people are
Yeah.
commenting on it too. Yeah. I mean, it's wow. Yeah. I'm glad you picked
So
that, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go
I'd
ahead.
say that's my favorite song on that album, just because it's got some pathos, I guess.
Yeah.
like
I mean,
a lot of passion.
a lot of passion. You're playing some really, really tasty, really cool stuff. Steve Perry's vocal performance, as usual.
The guitar. I mean, Neil sounds like Jimi Hendrix on that.
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
Some beautiful guitar playing on that.
And almost kind of, it's almost like Neil creates this sort of dark feeling too, just like this, the mood that he creates. So it's great. It's a great tune. And
Well,
so now we'll keep
where
moving
do we
along
go from here?
Okay, I know. I thought, well, we'll make it a little more upbeat and a little more happy, and
Okay.
and we'll move over to The Party's Over. But now, as far as a studio record, because this record, this does not have. I'm just thinking like chronologically. This is when Greg had left the band.
Well,
On this
it
particular
was in the
or
process of that
transition?
we had. This is from. It's on the Party's Over is on the Captured record,
Okay, right. Yep.
which is the double live album.
Yeah.
So the album was done, and this tune came up, and Greg was already like moving on,
Mhm.
and was ready for his next phase of his life and career. And I don't remember exactly where this, how this tune came up, but we went into Fantasy Studios to record it. And it was Steve Perry's playing bass on the track. And a lot of times, like when we were writing, like Perry would, put on a bass and just come up with a groove, and we'd start writing like that. But this tune developed with Steve Perry playing bass, and then he played it. So Ross didn't come to the session. Steve played on the album, on the record, and then there was a keyboard player named Tim Gorman who did some sessions around the Bay Area, and at some point later on toured with the Who, and he played piano on this. I know there's some synth. I'm not sure who played the synth on this.
Okay.
And then Neil's on it, and then I played drums and came up with this part that you pointed out that you're interested in me trying to describe.
Yeah. Should we put that up now? Should we talk about that for a second?
because I transcribed just the first couple bars for you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Let's put this up here. Hang on one second. All right. The Party's Over. And here it comes. There it is. Yeah, this intro, this 16th note feeling thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it looks kind of complicated, but essentially it's like if you're playing 16th notes on the hi-hat with the right hand playing, and just hand to hand, like 1E and a 2E and a 3, 4, 1E and a 2. And then, but I didn't play a note on one. I just, hit the bass drum and then doubled the left, right, left with left, left, right, right, left, left. So those are 30-second notes. And then, the snare drum on 2 with no hi-hat. And then there's like that little opening right before beat 3. And then the hi-hat on beat 3 is played with the foot in unison with the bass drum. So essentially the second measure is the same, except for I put a tom on the end of 4, like a rap tom beat.
The tom, right.
Yeah. So, so that's what it looks like transcribed.
It's, you make it sound like it's really easy. It's not. I mean, I've fooled around with it a bunch of times, and I don't know that having it transcribed makes it any easier for me, but maybe it will for
should I play it?
Yeah, let's. Yeah.
I have to
Absolutely.
take these out. So let me try just to do it slow.
Here we go.
So I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's it.
So that's, a slow version. So you could see it's a pretty simple beat, but then I just doubled up, the first beat. I doubled up those 16th notes into 32nd notes.
Yeah. And is that something you came up with? Like, you came up with that as you were writing the song, obviously. Yeah. You just kind of had that idea.
And Steve Gadd was doing some things like that in those days, with double strokes and, interesting hi-hat rhythms like that. So, I was inspired to try some of those ideas.
Very cool. Well, let's give it a listen, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. This is The Party's Over, Hopelessly in Love. Great, great song. Here it comes.
You never call me up when I'm alone at night.
What always got me about this song, Steve, is what you were talking about earlier. And
Wait a minute.
okay, yeah, absolutely.
I'm on a call, Ryan.
Does Ryan want to make his debut? He could make his debut on Live from My Drum Room.
No, that's okay.
Okay. My
go ahead,
granddaughter.
sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say what always got me about that song was, and you were talking about this earlier with, I'm trying to think of what song we were just talking about. Was it
Love and Touching?
Love and Touching? Yeah. I mean, when you're thinking of one song, you can't think of another one. Yeah, Love and Touching.
Yeah.
And you play that part at the end on the ride cymbal, and you wait until I think it's the third time Perry sings "The Party's Over."
Right.
And you switch from the hi-hat.
And it goes out on a hook.
Yes,
Again,
absolutely. Yeah, very, yeah.
Similar kind of arranging.
Similar kind of arranging, but certainly not, not a copy of it, just different, but like a consistent theme, so to speak. And again, that's just the drum part is so hip in that song. Just
well, I'm glad you think so. Thank you. It's very R&B-ish. Again, that's like, Steve sounds great on the bass, just very straightforward.
Man, does he? I know.
Notes.
I would have. You told me a long time ago that was Steve on bass, and I just assumed it was Ross. Wow.
Yeah, he sounded really great. So that was a very fun little session that we had.
And you guys tracked it together. Obviously, he tracked it as a rhythm section with you, and
yes.
And all these older tunes cut, no click tracks. Obviously, back then it was all done in the studio with good time.
Nobody was thinking about clicks. We rehearsed a lot. We found a tempo generally in rehearsal that felt good, and then looked to recreate it in the studio. It wasn't like very precise or anything. It's not like we said, let's like clock this at a particular metronome. It's just like going for a feel, for a feel. And it's a good point. You and I had a little talk about this before. It's one of the the main reasons why a drummer gets work is because they have good time. And if we think about all of our favorite drummers, what got them gigs to begin with is number one, they had to have good time. Right. And then they had to have a good feel. Good time and a good feel, and then a good imagination to be able to come up with parts. And that's like it's universal. Like you could, why did the Beatles want Ringo in their band? Because he wasn't the original drummer, but he had great time, great imagination, great energy. But you can just go on to, Philly Joe Jones to Buddy Rich to, any drummer that you can think of, Hal Blaine, they all had great time. And that's what is essentially got them started as a working musician. And the same with me. Like the reason I started working a lot around Boston is because I had good time, good feel. And then you go from there. I had good time, and I worked on having good time. But it didn't come from like practicing with a click or a metronome, because I didn't do that. I don't know that you couldn't really do that, You practiced keeping steady time, just as a feel. I could record myself on a cassette and listen back and hear inconsistencies, speeding up or slowing down, and just strive to adjust that so you develop a good steady time feel.
And probably, I mean, you took lessons, as a young drummer, and I'm guessing your teachers back then emphasized maybe working with a metronome and just, the sort of the minimum to being a drummer is having time, being able to develop good time. And
good time, good feel. Yeah. And then I'd say, good imagination. It depends on the environment, and if you were in a studio situation like, say, Hal Blaine, you'd have to come up with good parts for whatever song you were hired to play. Or if you were Tony Williams playing with Miles Davis, like coming up with great drumming for that environment, or Elvin Jones with John Coltrane. So it's going to be different as far as like where your creativity is going to, be, what the demand of the creativity is, but you have to have good time and good feel. And that's what I think about Mitch Mitchell with Jimi Hendrix and Ginger Baker with Cream and John Bonham with Led Zeppelin. No click tracks involved, but beautiful time, beautiful feel, great imagination.
Yeah. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Keith Moon probably gets a bad rap. I think his time was actually pretty good when you listen to those records. I mean, he was obviously not someone you think about as like a groovy drummer, but his time was the time is pretty solid in those songs.
Yeah, great feel, great energy.
Yeah, great, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And creativity, absolutely.
Right.
And the thing is, like, is pulse supersedes the time, like the pulse, meaning like the feel that the band agrees upon, like the underlying feel of the song has to be like universally within the group connected. But then it can fluctuate a little. Mm-hmm. Because you hear, certain songs, jazz songs, pop songs, they might speed up, might slow down. But if everyone's together, you really don't notice it unless you try to put it on the grid.
Right.
And then you'll notice it. But if you're just listening, it just flows and it sounds great. It's music.
Yeah. There's you've probably heard this before. When you said till you put it on the grid, there's a great Jeff Beccaro. You've probably heard this Jeff Beccaro saying where, he'd say, everybody has great time until you put a click track up, until you put them on the grid.
Right. It's funny. Yeah.
Oh, it's too funny. Well, I want to play a couple more songs here. And this is a song we don't have to play the whole song, but I think I've always loved what you play dynamically in this song, Stone in Love. And let me just bring it up here. It's there's like spots where you can hear that you're really playing, with a little more power and a little more energy, and then pulling back a little bit. Like, I think you'll see what I mean, and I think you probably know what I mean. But yeah, it's a great rock tune. Hang on a second. And
so that's on Escape. That's the Escape record, and that's with Jonathan Cain came into the group playing keyboards and guitar. So yes. He's like, there's two guitars in this. You hear Jonathan on one side and Neil on the other. Stereo, kind of stereo guitars. And some keyboards, there's not a lot of keyboards on this. It's mainly, I believe it's mainly the two guitars.
I assume Neil overdubbed a second guitar. I didn't realize that was, I knew he played guitar, but I just assumed.
Yeah. No, he's playing live on, we tracked it with the two guitars.
Got it. So is Neil starting it probably, and then Jonathan comes in as the second?
Probably. Guitar? I actually don't remember that, but probably he started with Neil. Yeah.
Okay. Because I think there is an organ part in it, maybe a Hammond or something.
Well, there's like a piano part at the very end where he just like plays one note. Okay. You'll hear it.
Okay, we'll hear it. Yeah. But where you come in with that like little, almost like a flammy or is it a triplet, like, and there are just spots where
it's not a triplet. It's probably like 30-second notes on the bass drum. But then if you listen real close, I'm doing some Don't Stop Believing kind of stuff on the bell of the cymbal, like it's from that same album. Escape. And so you'll hear I was really experimenting with all these little rhythmic ideas. So you'll hear that if you listen real close in some of the turnarounds. Little offbeats on the bell of the cymbal too.
Yeah. And I guess what I was trying to say as far as the dynamics, it's just different parts of the song where you sort of take it back a little bit, or you push it forward a little bit, like just to give the song more dynamics. And it's, as a drummer, I think it really shows the importance of how that contributes to the song,
All right, cool.
All
Yeah, let's check
All
it
right,
out.
here we go. Stone in Love.
Those crazy nights I do remember in my youth. I do recall those were the best times, most of all. In the heat with a blue jean girl,
Funky too.
burning love, come once in a lifetime. She found me singing by the railroad tracks, took me home, we danced by the moonlight. Those summer nights are calling, stone in love. Can't help myself, I'm falling, stone in love. Old dusty roads led to the river, running slow. She pulled me down, winding clover, we go round. In the heat with a blue jean girl, burning love, come once in a lifetime. All the memories never fade away. Golden girl, I'll keep you forever. Those summer nights are calling, stone in love. Can't help myself, I'm falling, stone in love. Those summer nights are calling, stone in love. Can't help myself, I'm falling, stone in love.
Yeah, I guess when I was talking about the dynamics, that build section there where you guys kind of a little bit of a breakdown. Yeah. Very,
And
very.
there's a lot. That's a lot of stuff worked out with Ross, especially on that ending between the
Yeah.
bass and the drums. Like, our parts were pretty well worked out. So, and I don't know, they just have a nice feel, some syncopation going on.
Yeah.
So,
I think
yeah,
you and Ross
that-
are I was just I think, maybe often overlooked as the great rhythm section that you were, and or are, it's
yeah, we worked out a lot of details.
yeah.
Yeah, really, and he was really good at working with the bass drum. He'd really listen close and work with the bass drum and yeah, very compositional
Yeah,
bass
yeah.
player.
Yeah, I always that's a great way to describe his playing, because he's obviously not a real he's not Daryl Jones, obviously, but he's got a great feel and comes up with great parts, and you guys
He
played so
does.
well together. Yeah.
I think
Well,
so. Yeah.
yeah. I know your grandkids are probably getting impatient with this guy who's
like, what's
keeping-
going on over there?
All right. Well, I'm gonna move off Journey for 1 second and talk
Okay.
about a really, really great song you recorded with Bryan Adams, and I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. And the song is Heaven,
Right.
and it's, there's so much to talk about with this song, and I won't go on and on about it, but I'd like to play this little video clip of Mickey Curry.
Okay.
Mickey, for anybody watching who doesn't know this, Mickey Curry, great Mickey Curry, is Bryan Adams. I think he's still playing with Bryan, or he did for a long time. And he was Bryan's regular drummer at that time. And he was also playing with Hall & Oates. He had two of the biggest gigs in the world in the 80s. And, for a long time, Mickey, it's funny. He's a very funny guy, Mickey. He managed to sort of balance both of those things until one time when they were recording Heaven. So I'm going to play this clip. This is from Mickey Curry, who was on Live from My Drum Room in March of 2021, talking about recording Heaven, or him not recording Heaven. And here it comes.
There was a session with Bryan. It was the Heaven session. The song Heaven. We were at the power station, and I had a rehearsal at SIR with Hall & Oates that day, and Bryan wanted to record. So I was in New York staying, and I talked to him, and he said, "No, it's cool. We'll get going on the song. You go do your rehearsal and come back and we'll record it tonight." So okay. So we got in early that day. We got in the studio and we set up and we ran through the song a couple of times. And I'm looking at my watch and, "Buddy, I'm really sorry, man. I got to go." And yeah, okay, no problem. Just, so I'll see you later. So I went, "Great. I'll come back as soon as I'm done. Rehearsal's only a few hours. I'll be back." So I go out, go rehearse with Daryl and John, and I go flying back down to power station. And I walked in and they're listening back to the song and it's all done. Steve Smith is standing in the control room. And my first reaction was, "That's Steve Smith." Whoa, I get to meet Steve Smith, who at the time was absolutely like just one of my, listen to the stuff this guy plays, He's just, And so everybody kind of looks at me like, uh-oh, well, whatever. And we listened to the song. It was unbelievably good. The drum track is so good on that song. Steve plays so beautifully.
He got lucky, Mickey. That's it. It was just luck.
No, so I don't know what happened. But anyway, Brian's, "Oh, Mick, yeah, hey, listen, Steve was in town and I was talking to him on the phone. I said, 'You want to come down?' And he came down and we just put the track together." And I went, "Buddy, it's fine. You got an amazing track." And, Steve was so kind and sweet and nice, and really nice. So anyway, that was the one day where those two gigs sort of clashed and crossed paths, and I didn't come out the other end very well from either of them, but it was okay because the song's great and is a huge hit for him. And
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. I didn't realize he had a rehearsal.
Yeah,
I heard, because Bryan told me that he was there working up the song, but that he had a gig. I thought he was going up to the Beacon Theater to play a gig or something. But anyway, that's interesting. I didn't realize that it was a rehearsal.
Yeah. He had told me that story a long time ago, and then when I had him on the show, we talked about it. And he's just such a great guy, such a humble guy. And I think it's.
But I do want to point out now, he was not touring with Bryan at that time.
Right. It was Pat Stewart, I think, was his touring drummer.
No, a guy named Frankie LaRocca.
Oh, Frankie was his touring drummer?
Yeah. So that was in 1983. It was in the middle of the Frontiers tour. And Bryan Adams was the opening act.
Yeah.
And so, we got to know each other and we hung out and had a lot of fun hanging out. And he was in the studio making this recording this song Heaven for a soundtrack. It wasn't, for an album. It was originally for a soundtrack.
Right.
And so he wait a minute. Hey, you guys. So he knew that I had the day off because we were on tour together, and we all had a day off in New York, and so he called me in my hotel room and said, can you come down and work on a tune? Which I said, sure. So came down to the power station, and Bob Clearmountain was engineering and producing, and his drum set was set up in the room. So he had this big Ludwig kit.
It was Bob's kit. Okay, yeah.
Bob Ludwig's kit. Yeah, I mean Bob Clearmountain's kit, and it was a Ludwig drum set. And I can't remember if it was 3 racks and 2 floors or 2 racks and 2 floors, but it was a big kit, tuned impeccably. Bob Clearmountain tuned it, and so I learned the tune just by playing it. Like, they didn't play me any demos or just. And it was his touring band without Frankie LaRocca, It was the same bass player and keyboard player and guitar player. But, I learned the tune, and he wanted that kind of Heaven approach.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like faithfully, right?
Faithfully approach. Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I think of.
Yeah, faithfully kind of approach, which, he heard us play every night. And I think that was why he called me to come in and do that. So, learned the tune and, played it a few takes and we had it. And the only other part of, that I can add to that is then when it was done, they had me play just a bunch of fills in the tempo. And we didn't use a click for that. We played it with just, the feel. And they wanted me to play some fills. So I just played some time and then some fills. And I think they spliced in like this one big triplet fill at the end.
Okay. That was
they'd have to cut it like, with a razor blade, but people were good at that.
I know that was
very good at that.
Amazing that they could do stuff like that. They could literally splice tape together and make it sound that way. Yeah. Incredible. So great. So that I wondered about the drum set. I wondered if it was Mickey's, whatever he was playing back then, Yamaha drums. So it was Bob Clearmountain's. Yeah. And Mickey has actually on the show he did with me mentioned when they would record in Vancouver, he would record on Bob's Ludwig drum set. So that makes sense. It's consistent. Yeah. Do you remember, Steve, were they using any, it's probably before Simmons, like any electronic enhancement, like an SDS5 or anything?
No,
probably
I
not.
don't think so.
No.
It wasn't before Simmons though, because actually I did have 4 Simmons pads on that tour.
About that time. You did. Okay. About that time is when it,
like on the Frontiers tour, I had this, big Sonar kit and Rosewood. I had gone back from playing like the real deep drums that I used on the Escape tour.
Yeah.
On the Escape tour, I had this, drum set with the super.
Is that the kit?
That's the kit from Frontiers tour, and you can see 2 Simmons pads. Well, there's 2 on the right and 2 on the left. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So that was integrated. So it was that time period, and that's my son Ian, who's
I know,
now 42 years old.
I want to give credit to our dear friend, the beautiful late Lissa Wales. This is a photo she took, and I think it's dated 1987. So, yeah.
No, that would have been 1983.
83. Maybe there was another picture that said 87. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, 83.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, when you said the Rosewood kit, I remembered seeing that picture. So, yeah. Thank you, Lissa.
With
for
the
that.
Simmons pads, exactly.
With the Simmons pads and an SDS5 at that point, I think probably was what. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so let's.
But not on Heaven. No, there was no electronics on
okay.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the sound of those drums, and it was probably a Ludwig, like deep metal snare, like a 402 Superphonic or something.
I don't remember the details of that.
Yeah. What a great drum song. Look, we'll give it a listen. Let's
All
check
right.
it out. All right. This is Heaven, Brian Adams, and some just incredible drumming by Steve.
Oh, thinking about all our younger years. There was only you and me. We were young and wild and free. Now nothing can take you away from me. We've been down that road before, but that's over now. You keep me coming back for more. Baby, you're all that I want. When you're lying here in my arms, I'm finding it hard to believe we're in heaven. And love is all that I need, and I found it there in your heart. Isn't too hard to see we're in heaven. Oh, once in your life you find someone who will turn your world around, bring you up when you're feeling down. Yeah, nothing can change what you mean to me. Oh, there's lots that I can say, but just hold me now, 'cause our love will light the way. And baby, you're all that I want. When you're lying here in my arms, I'm finding it hard to believe we're in heaven. Yeah, love is all that I need, and I found it there in your heart. It isn't too hard to see we're in heaven. I've been waiting for so long, for something to arrive, for love to come along. Now our dreams are coming true, through the good times and the bad. Yeah, I'll be standing there by you.
Here it comes.
And baby, you're all that I want. When you're lying here in my arms, I'm finding it hard to believe we're in heaven. And love is all that I need, and I found it there in your heart. Isn't too hard to see we're in heaven. You're all that I want. You're all that I need.
Yeah, there was no way I was going to end it before that, Phil. Steve, don't worry.
I think that's when they spliced in, like this is an extra fill.
Okay.
It's a unique thing to do. I had never done anything like that before. Like, the song's done, like to take, but just give me a few extra fills.
That's
So-
man, I know. And but that big open fill you do that leads from the end of the instrumental into the chorus. That's a live that
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that
all went
big-
down.
that monstrous. Yeah, well, we're going to wrap it up in a minute. I want to play
I want to just say one other thing.
yeah.
That's the only number one song I've ever been on.
Don't Stop Believin' was not a number one song?
No.
Wow. Oh
Yeah, it
my
was never
God.
number one on the radio. So, but Heaven was. So,
Well,
Just
congratulations.
an interesting little trivia there.
Yeah.
And just to talk about Mickey for a moment, is that he was Brian's recording drummer.
Yeah.
So he played on the albums. And
Right.
and I know eventually he started to tour with him, but he was like his, go-to studio drummer. So he sounds great on the albums, and was touring with Hall and Oates, of course, but
Yes.
later I think he started touring with Brian.
You're absolutely right. You're 100%
Yeah.
right. He had played with Hall and Oates through the 80s as their
Yeah.
recording and touring drummer. It was like his main
Right.
priority at that time. And they were such a huge band at that time. You can understand why. Brian was still, yeah.
And he
But,
sounds great on Brian, and Mickey sounds great on Brian Adams' album. Really,
He
sounds
does.
amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You sound incredible. And I was going to ask you on that song, do you remember, did Brian give like a scratch? Did you have any sort of scratch vocal to hear what it was going to sound like, or you just like knew what the form?
He must have sung it when I tracked, but yet, now that you mention it, I actually don't remember, because I had to know what was going. Yeah, I had to know what was going on with the vocal. Yeah.
Right. They complement the vocal so perfectly. I mean, it really sounds like he's live in the room,
Yes,
cutting it with
it
you
does.
live. But
And he could have been, probably was, but you know what? I actually don't remember.
I don't
It's too
blame you,
long
Steve.
ago.
A long time ago. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to play one more song, and this was the point to all this was, we sort of talked about this off the air, is, it's like you had this 7-year journey with Journey, and I think everyone would agree, I don't think anyone would disagree, that they really were the most, pound for pound, the most productive years, the most productive period in terms of the success of the band and the output creatively and commercially and everything else. And I thought this would be kind of I don't know, in my mind, the song I'm going to play, it's kind of to see how the band has sort of evolved musically, and the song Only the Young, to where you're playing it almost like a session guy in a sense. You know what I mean? Not, if that makes sense, like you're playing exactly what the song called for, which was, like a really good groove, really tasty playing. And,
what I remember about playing that is that I was keying off the guitar arpeggios.
Okay.
And so the part that I came up with was really just like a Charlie Watts drum part.
Yeah.
That worked perfectly with the guitar arpeggios. And I did write it down for you when you brought it up, because I remember that I played the left hand on the hi-hat, the right hand on the snare, but with the Charlie Watts beat of not playing the hi-hat on the backbeats. It's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right. And with a traditional grip with the left hand on the hi-hat, just playing like very lightly. So the accentuation was the bass drum and the snare drum and a very light hi-hat. Except for there's a couple parts in the tune where instead of playing a ride cymbal, I just played the crash cymbal, because I wanted it to be a really washy ride.
Yeah.
And I think Bob Clearmountain again mixed this song, and he put a sample on the snare drum.
Okay. Yeah. It's really fat sounding. Yeah.
So you hear one of his samples on the backbeats. Yeah, and it's very straightforward, and it wasn't a whole lot of fills or anything. It was mostly just tom build up.
Yeah.
As far as
no, I'm glad you said that, Steve, because I probably didn't explain it. I guess it's just very different from a lot of other parts that you played. Things that you had come up with, and it's so perfect for this song. And the Charlie analogy is perfect, because it reminds me of just what Charlie would play, like a very simple and support what all the other guys were doing, kind of thing. The guitar, the vocal. Yeah. There's another point I was going to make too. The crash cymbal part. again, that's unique to what I think of you doing typically in those situations. And, just playing that kind of just open crash, washy crash sound during that part.
Yeah, it's just that's what it felt like it needed.
Yeah.
So I went there.
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for
And
writing
you'll
this
hear
out,
I
too.
do a couple of little signature Charlie Watts, like he would go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, You know how he plays it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's one or two of those in there too. So I'm really keying off my Charlie Watts influences for this.
Can I just tell everybody a quick funny story? I promise I'll make it really fast. This goes back to 2006. Steve was playing in Boston at the Regatta Bar, and you were playing with. It wasn't Vital Information. It was Jazz Legacy. Was it Jazz Legacy? And Charlie Watts, who rest his soul, was a very good friend of mine, and he was in town with the Rolling Stones. I'd been at a rehearsal the night before, and I mentioned to Charlie that Steve was playing the following night at the Regatta Bar. And I brought Charlie to the same club years before to see Brian Blade with Joshua Redman. So he knew the area. It was in Cambridge, Harvard Square. So anyway, Charlie said, yes, I'd love to come. And Tim Reese, the Stones sax player, came along as well. And Steve's playing, and he is just tearing it up, as you would imagine. And the band was incredible. And after the show, we go back into Steve's dressing room. Charlie and Tim and I go back there, and they're chatting, Steve and Charlie. And I guess in Charlie's mind, you guys had just met for the first time that night. And if you want to take it from here, Steve, I'll let you. But
and I told him that I met him earlier. It was in 1981, where Journey opened 3 shows for the Rolling Stones, and it was we had just released Escape, and we were getting a lot of play on Don't Stop Believin', and Who's Crying Now, Open Arms. But we played in front of 90,000 people, Stones fans at JFK Stadium, and the majority of the fans booed us. Like, get rid of this opening act. We want the Stones. And I remember one of the things that was like, we were supposed to play an hour, and I think we played like 40 minutes because then bottles were flying.
Oh my God.
And Bill Graham put it together, the rock impresario. And Steve Perry, I remember, went to the side of the stage and said, Bill, we're dying out here. And he goes, well, just play a little more. So I told Charlie about I told Charlie about that. And he was kind of mortified, that the fans would do that.
He said, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we had 2 other gigs that we had to do, like 2 other stadiums that we had to play. But we sort of figured out, let's just not talk to the audience. Because I remember one of the things was that I think the album was number 1. The actual album, yes. Escape, was number 1. And Steve Perry announced that to the fans. And they weren't happy about that. It makes me laugh now to talk about it. It's pretty funny. So then we had 2 more gigs, and we just put together like a short set. Didn't talk to the audience, just went out and played. Anyway, it was a trip for me to see the Stones after that, because they were very loose.
Yeah.
They got like, as in later years, like more polished, but in those years, first of all, they were like 2 or 3 hours late. We stopped.
Yes.
And then we had to wait for them to even get there. And Charlie and Bill Wyman came to our little trailer, and just to say hi. They were so cool.
Yeah.
We didn't meet the other guys, but we met Charlie and Bill Wyman. And so I reminded Charlie, that's the first time I met you. But then, like, I know that the part of the story, like, then after we talked about that, he was very complimentary about my playing that night in Boston. And he goes, so you were playing in Journey. Were you that good then?
Right. And your answer was probably not.
Probably not.
But you were. I will correct you and say you were. But no, it was, if you were in the room, which I was, it was one of the funniest moments ever. He went, you were in Journey? were you that good? Were you this good then, or something? Yeah, and but he was mortified about the way
Right.
that and then the irony thing, and we'll get to the song, I promise. But the irony is that 1981, their record "Tattoo You" was out. It was a big record for the Stones, but it didn't do nearly as well as Escape did. That's kind of the irony, is that you guys were the opening band, but you were selling a ton of records in those days.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just that's
Well, yeah.
how that business works, Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get to the last song in Track Talk. I'm sorry, Steve. Were you going to?
No, but I'm glad, because then I had some beautiful interactions with Charlie after that. So that really worked out, because I would, like, a few weeks or a couple months later, we played at Ronnie Scott's with Vital Information in 2006, and he came down to see us then. And then there was when they Stones were at the Beacon Theater for Shine a Light. You
Right.
hooked me up,
Yeah.
and I went to the Stones rehearsal, and then the next day to the recording of that movie, Shine a Light. And then Charlie called me and invited me to the movie, which I wasn't in New York. I was here in Oregon. But then eventually we hung together via Tim Reese in
Yep.
Minneapolis, because I was playing in Minneapolis with Vital Information at the Dakota, and the Stones were playing, in a big stadium. But we both had one night off the same night, and it was Charlie's birthday. Tim Reese was playing at the Dakota, and Charlie and I went and hung out, and we both sat in with the band, with Tim's
Right.
band, which was super fun. So we had some really great hangs and a lot of fun together.
Yeah. He was a lovely man. He really was. He was such a,
yeah.
and he was a big fan of yours. I'll just say, every time after that, whenever we would talk about drummers, he'd say, he'd be talking about someone, and he'd say, I mean, he's no Steve Smith, but I mean, he's really good. He's really, he can do this. But, I mean, I'm not saying he's as good as Steve Smith, but yeah, he would use, you set the bar really high for him.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But there's only one Charlie Watts. So here's my best version of Charlie Watts on
Okay.
Only the Young. Here we go.
All right. Great setup. Here it comes.
Never done it any time. You could have found out they'll cry ahead of their time.
There's those cymbal crashes. So, and Steve, are you hitting like a tom-tom during that chorus?
Yeah,
Is there like
like doubling the snare on. Yeah, like doubling like snare and tom together on some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, this has been so great. And I so appreciate you spending so much time with me today. I know your grandkids are dying for your attention.
They're running amok right now.
No, I'm so jealous. I'm going to see mine tomorrow. It's my granddaughter's birthday next week. So we're going to celebrate her
Great.
birthday tomorrow. Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, this is great.
All right, Johnny, this has been super fun. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody, thank you so much for watching today. A big, big hand for my buddy, my hero, Steve Smith.
Thank you, Johnny. Good to be here.
Good to have you here, Steve.
No, we'll do it again sometime.
We will. We'll do it again sometime. I won't keep you as long. I want to thank everybody for watching today. Big hand for Steve. Steve, hang out. I'll end the stream. We'll say goodbye. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. All right, that's my show. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, leave me a comment, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also download the podcast on all podcast platforms. And I'm excited to tell you that Live from My Drum Room has been ranked #1 best drum podcast for the second straight year. So thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it. And I want to invite you to check out livefrommydrumroom.com, my website, for upcoming shows and also for information on ordering Live from My Drum Room merchandise, t-shirts and hoodies. 100% of the proceeds go toward a scholarship I've created with the Percussive Arts Society. There's also information on ordering merchandise in the show notes. And you can email or text me at livefrommydrumroom@gmail.com. So remember, no drummers are harmed on any show. And drummers, when in doubt, leave it out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you again real soon.